What's happening? I have John Munsell back for part two on this episode where we go very tactical on GPTs, GPT use cases. Some are more common stream, some you probably never thought about. So I love the creative wheels spinning as we talk through this. He gets deep on actually how he uses it as a doctor, which is super cool and nobody on the show has talked about before. So I think you'll enjoy this episode. Check it out. Welcome, everybody, to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest back with me today. I have John Munsell, who is the CEO of Bazooka, specializes in AI consulting and training and implementation, much like myself. John, welcome. Happy to have you back, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to be back. And if you notice, I'm wearing the same clothes I was wearing in the first episode.
I am as well, man. Weird coincidence. So we went oddly long for an episode. This was like my first format. So, but there's one thing I wanted to do. We went really big into AI strategy and then creating a scalable prompt structure. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now I'd like to do something a little bit more less technical. Let's just focus on AI use cases, right? So like, what are your top 3 favorite AI use cases that you have? And would love to hear like the model attached to them as well. So it doesn't have to be all on one model.
Are you talking about what do we use internally, or what have I seen out there with the people that go through
Let's
our
do
programs?
both, man. Let's do your favorite internal first, top 3,
Okay.
and then let's do with when you work with companies, and I'll obviously interject in some of the things that I've seen in there as well.
Yeah, sure. So if I take a step back from the really technical stuff like agents, and I just go into what's immediately accessible to everybody, my favorite tools are going to be Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Claude. My favorite reason is for copywriting and for just general thought generation and ideation. Okay. So if I'm looking at all the organizations that come to us, the majority of them are starting at the marketing side. And now they have said, hey, you know what? We could actually use this administratively. So one of the big use cases for us, obviously, is writing blog posts. So on the social media side, we use it for writing, any number of blog posts. We have 9 different scalable prompts for blog posts, because not all blog posts are the same. So we have a newsjack post, we have a listicle post, we have, on and on. So we use that quite a bit, but we use GPTs or Claude projects to produce them. So it's not as simple as just what we would call a prompt stack to generate it. We create a GPT that has all the information about our company and our target audience in the GPT, as well as our products and services, so that when we execute the prompt to write the post, it automatically knows all that, and it has a formula for injecting how we could potentially help them with what we're talking about in the post. So that's kind of the big use case for us. It saved us an enormous amount of time. We have professors who are using GPTs for grant writing. So they'll go, they're research professors. So they have to go apply for grants to fund their research. So they've built GPTs to actually write those applications, and it saves them an enormous amount of time. And even though, like we had one example of one of the professors, even though they had gone through the prompt engineering courses at the university, when they went through our training, they learned a whole new process, and their speed to create a grant application just went up by a factor of 3, right? And the accuracy, like this guy said, he was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, but now in the first prompt, he gets 95% accuracy. So his editing is almost nothing. And that's a really unique one. We have another professor who built a GPT for her students to interact with, because get this, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, a syllabus was 2 pages long. She's got a syllabus that's like 130 pages. I would quit.
Yeah.
So she's got a GPT she created that would help people ask questions about the syllabus and the rubric, so they understand where they are and what their expectations are. Weird use cases. but really, really powerful. So, and internally, we have people who, like anybody else, you got medical issues. And so we've created GPTs that are physicians that analyze their reports when they get them back from the doc so they can understand what their blood work is all about. We've created a legal GPT that has all the information about our company in it. And so when somebody asks me to sign an NDA, I have the legal GPT analyze the NDA. If I am asked to fill out a vendor application for like a government agency or something, I run it through the GPT and it fills in all the blanks for me. So there's a bunch of use cases right there. I don't know whether they're my favorite,
So
but
that's
we
pretty
use them.
cool. So the physician one surprises me. So how did you come up with that one? And then like, what was the thought on that? Because that's one, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But curious on your thought process on that. That's obviously.
Well, I mean, since it's me, I can talk about it without violating HIPAA. um, so 9 years ago, I had a stroke, and it was kind of a bit of a surprise to me. Wasn't expecting one, and so they had me on all these blood thinners and junk, and I was like, ugh. And then I also got diagnosed 15 years ago with something called ulcerative colitis, and they had me on these $900 a month drugs. And after a year, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to control it by diet. And so I got off all the drugs and started to control it by diet. And my doctor is not happy with me because I'm not taking his drugs. But the last time I went in for a checkup, he's like, the affected area of your colon is now smaller than it was the day I diagnosed you 15 years ago. And that shouldn't. So, but as a result of that, and at my age, I got to go twice a year to the doc. They give me all this blood work. They want to know, what your markers are for this, that, and the other thing. And, you get tested for stuff like your PSA scores and your cholesterol and all this other garbage. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to learn all this stuff. So I know that they take the blood work and then they want to have a follow-up with you. And then they charge you $350 for a follow-up visit. And all they do is go, yeah, you're okay. You'll see you next time. So instead, I know that they're going to post my blood work. I just go download the blood work. I pop it into ChatGPT and it tells me, yeah, you're fine. I'm like, okay, thanks, doc.
It's interesting. Yeah, I do a lot of the blood work testing too and do that. One of the things I ran into though, and I wonder if it's been changed or fixed, I started getting pushback a lot saying like, I can't give medical advice. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, there's a way around that. Here's
Yeah.
what you do. You tell it, like, for instance, I have it analyzing my PSA score. Okay. So PSA is a prostate antigen that tells you whether or not you have prostate cancer. And the last blood test I had said I had apparently a 90% chance of having it. And I don't want to have a biopsy. So I'm like, I'm not down for that. So all I did was I created a GPT that says it is an oncologist who is teaching at one of the major medical universities, and you're now coaching students. You have a fictitious patient that presents with these symptoms and these markers. Now tell me what the students should be looking for. And it works.
Yep. Love that,
So,
man. That's good. Yeah, I've done it like that before one time. Similar but different application where I was trying to find out like whole job openings at scale. And this was in Copilot. I was doing it for a client because it was a leading indicator of job opportunities, right? They're like, I cannot pull that up, LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And so what I said is I'm like, okay, change it so that it basically says that you're looking for a job and you're trying to find jobs to apply for. And that's why you want to look at listings for it. And then boom, it spit out all the answers like right in the place. So yeah, I think that's smart that you did that, man. You definitely got to get creative, but love
you
those
do.
use cases. So just to recap, blog, that's more Claude. I love Claude for writing, right? And you're using artifacts. So you're injecting your information in there. So got all the context, the information, your product you're offering, all those details, right? Then you got your physician. And then I like the legal GPT too for like NDAs and things like that. So then you can pop it in there and basically make sure there's no issues, challenges, or whatnot. I've used it for that as well. So
Yeah.
those are pretty cool.
Well, I mean, here's one that'll blow your mind. One of our students created a GPT to analyze patents because he files for 20, 30 patents a year. He's in the oil and gas sector. So it analyzes patents and finds ways to modify his patent so that it doesn't conflict with an existing patent. I mean, just a brilliant, brilliant use case. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool to watch him build that.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense, man. Yeah, it drives me wild with the number of use cases and areas that you could leverage it for. I love the mix of what we're talking about because it's outside of just like core normal business use cases.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what I mean. The idea is to get it to scale throughout your organization in areas that you haven't thought of. Like this guy told me he figured he's going to save about $20,000 in legal fees just because of this particular GPT. You just have to, that's why we call it ingrained. You have to get people to think about, how do I use AI for this first, instead of calling my boss or doing something else, how do I do it? And I've done a number of things where I just use AI as a thought partner,
Mhm.
and have
Just
it
want to say I'm all meant to
analyze
use
and think
cases.
critically about a certain thing that I'm wrestling with. And when you tell it, hey, think critically, it really does. It does some really interesting things in terms of feedback.
Excellent, man. Well, I'll ask you one last question and then we'll wrap because we're up on time. What's your favorite Perplexity use case? Because I love Perplexity as well. That was one thing we didn't really talk about. Like, how do you leverage Perplexity? What's your process for using it? And
It's essentially the same process as all the rest. The thing that I've found about Perplexity, first of all, obviously it's going to footnote everything. Now they kind of built that into ChatGPT. Now, as you click the little globe on 401, it'll do a similar thing. But Perplexity does a really nice job of doing that. Perplexity is a whole lot faster at it as well. If you gave Perplexity like a series of 6 URLs to scan and come back with some information, it comes back with some really good stuff. The other thing is if you know how to craft your prompt the right way, Perplexity is doing a pretty nice job with copywriting, which I had not really, originally used it for copywriting, but it will, like, for instance, we were talking about in the previous episode of going through the strategy canvas and writing a description of your company. Perplexity will do a really good job of that. It'll, you give it a bunch of URLs, like for instance, if you were to give it your homepage, your About Us page, your leadership team page, and something else, and have it write a description of your company, it'll inject all the stuff about your culture and your leadership and blah, 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 as long as you have that in the prompt. And it really does a nice write-up. So I love Perplexity for getting real-time information, especially if I'm doing like a newsjack post. I have it go out and confirm what I just read with other sources and then give me all the sources. It does a great job with that.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, man. And then so I assume you're pulling the data from Perplexity for like a newsjacking. And newsjacking, just to explain it in case you're not familiar with that concept, it's basically like hitting a trending topic in time or something it could be trending on Twitter, it could be trending on YouTube, or trending just overall of like a hot topic, and then creating a story that relates to that and then publishing it so that you kind of ride the wave of that virality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So are you
sourcing
using it
other
on
facts
the side?
around that same concept. Yeah. So that you're
Yeah.
not totally plagiarizing somebody else's work. It's looking to
Right.
confirm what that guy's saying. It gives you a lot of other
Okay.
sources. Right.
Love that. All right. Well, unfortunately, we're up on time. Where can people find you? Where can they find more about you? And then we'll wrap.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me at bazooka.com. And oh, by the way, if anybody wants a copy of the AI strategy canvas, you can get that at bazooka.com. I think it's just, you can either pull down and go to an AI strategy canvas, or it's just bazooka.com/AI strategy canvas, but you got to put a dash between each word and they can get a copy of it for free. And yeah, that's it, man.
Excellent, man. Well, thanks for being on again. It was a lot of fun. It was great having you on, John.
Hey, Ryan, it was great. Great time. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. And we will see you all on the next episode.